What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my key tips for the personal statement, including how to get started and some of my key findings from my research in crafting my own personal statement. Let's jump right into it. The first step is to gather all your information. It's really important to take time to sit down and reflect on a lot of the experiences that you've had, as well as to write down your most notable experiences. Write down any experiences that have had a major impact in your life trajectory, especially those that really illustrate why medicine. Perhaps there's a certain shadowing experience that you really remembered, or you have a certain childhood illness or experience with a relative having an illness that kickstarted your interest in medicine and put you onto the path of wanting to become a doctor. Make sure that you take the time to really think deeply about all of your life experiences and write down any life experiences that you think would have contributed to your why medicine. I found it really useful to draw out a little concept diagram where I wrote down a lot of my big experiences and just sort of connected them together. It provided a really nice way for me to conceptualize a timeline of my life, as well as how some of my key experiences got me interested in medicine. Same light of gathering information, you want to start looking for examples. It's really helpful to have prior student examples of personal statements to get a general structure and feel for how a personal statement is crafted and how it may differ from your college admission essay, as well as any other essays that you've written in your schooling career. It's really helpful to pull from others' examples, but also make sure that you're not copying down whole paragraphs or whole essays. As you're reading through these essays, make sure that you're focusing more on getting the general feel for how a personal essay is crafted, in contrast to trying to fit the mold of some of these other essays, as the personal statement is going to be unique for everyone. Oftentimes, the examples that are posted are from students who are above and beyond, so definitely don't try to match any of the other personal statements that you come across, and focus on trying to craft the best one that you can. Once you've gathered all of your stories and read plenty of examples, it's time to structure your essay. Outlining is one of the most important things, not just in the personal statement, but writing an essay in general. It gives you a general roadmap as to what you'll be covering, and oftentimes, if you write a good enough outline, you can just write in sentences to fill in the gaps. Make sure that you have an appropriate introduction, body, and conclusion. Remember, when you're writing the personal essay, that the main idea of this essay is why medicine. Make sure that you're choosing stories and writing out sentences that all go towards this main goal of illustrating why you want to be a doctor. I definitely know, being a writer, that writing the hook is one of the hardest things for an essay. One thing I've seen a lot of students do is taking a notable experience from their life and capitalizing on one scene as that introduction. Make sure this example is something that is relatively related to medicine, or one that you eventually draw a connection to why you want to be a doctor. For example, for me, I used a childhood experience of being in the hospital. Make sure to check out my personal statement video to see how exactly I set up this hook, as well as for the rest of my personal statement. Make sure that you're ending your conclusion on a strong note. Bonus points if you can tie it back into your hook, but make sure that you really capitalize on why medicine. Also use the conclusion as an opportunity to reinforce and reaffirm why you want to do medicine. Once you have your examples, your outline, and a general idea of what you want to include in your personal statement, it's time to write. For this step, it's important that you let go of trying to write a perfect essay and just write. This personal statement is potentially one of the most important essays you're going to write, and it's also one of the essays that sets your trajectory for why you want to go into medicine. Inevitably, it's going to take a lot of writes, rewrites, and rough drafts. The more rough drafts that you have, the more you have to work with. You definitely can't edit a blank document, but you can edit a rough draft that you've already started on. Don't be afraid to write, and write whatever comes to mind. This is a brainstorming stage, and you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the opportunity to explore different ideas, stories, and angles that you're taking for the personal statement. I know as pre-meds, we often have this idea that we have to have everything right in order and everything perfect, so try your best to let go of trying to be perfect. Enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and write whatever comes to mind. I can tell you right now that I went through so many different versions of my own personal statement, but it's really interesting, once you have everything done, to step back and see how the essay has evolved over time. Next step, once you have your rough draft, is to edit. At this point, you'll be picking out the rough draft that really stands out the most to you and the one that you want to continue with, and you're going to be editing for grammar, punctuation, but not just mechanical things, but also make sure you're being mindful of the tone, the purpose, and of course evaluating if you're achieving the ultimate goal of this essay. Why do you want to go into medicine? After you've gone through your rough draft and you've edited it the most that you can, it's time to ask others to read your essay to get some feedback. Some people you can ask include family members and friends. You want to add a caution on this one, as family members and friends can be a little bit personally biased since they are your relatives. So make sure that you're also asking people who are going to give you honest and constructive feedback. If you have a university writing center, definitely submit your piece for peer or professional feedback. It's also helpful if you have a pre-health office that can specifically look at your essay, as they've been through hundreds of students' essays. Don't be afraid to ask physicians that you may have shadowed, or even medical students, as they have been through the whole application process and can provide you really recent feedback. You definitely want to get your essay to different groups of people, but try not to send it to too many people, as having too many conflicting types of feedback can turn your essay into what some have deemed a village essay. Don't send it to too many people so that you can preserve the personal aspect of your personal statement. When you're sending your essay out to people and receiving feedback, make sure to also take some of the feedback with a grain of salt. This is, after all, your essay, so if there's something that someone's saying and you still really want to include whatever it is in your essay, don't be afraid to do so, especially if it reflects yourself as a person and something that you want to demonstrate to medical schools. Now that we've gone through the steps of writing the personal statement, let's get into some of my key tips for the personal statement. My first tip is to be yourself and let yourself shine through. You don't want to force any particular type of narrative or try to present a different person than you are. Ultimately, the personal statement is a chance for you to show medical schools who you really are beyond the numbers and stats on your application. Another tip is to tell a story. People love stories, and people connect best with stories. Make sure that you're incorporating stories that illustrate your personality as well as why you chose medicine. Make sure that you're not using the personal statement to explain why you would be a good medical student. You don't want to include statements like, I'm really hardworking, I'm really compassionate, I'm a really good student, I love science, I love academics, because lots of people who apply to medical school are going to be compassionate, hardworking, dedicated, the list goes on. And AdComs don't want to hear why you're going to be an amazing medical student. They just want to get to know you as a person and why you chose to pursue medicine. In the same light, don't try to list out traits that you think are what makes a good doctor. For example, you don't want to say, I know doctors are compassionate and I volunteered at a homeless shelter, so therefore, since I'm compassionate, I would be a good doctor. AdComs can see when you're trying to sell yourself in this type of manner. This often doesn't work as well. It also doesn't serve the purpose of showing AdComs more of your personality and who you are as a person. In the personal statement, you're trying to convey why you want to be a doctor, not why you already are a good doctor. So be mindful of this important distinction. Another thing that's really important is to show versus tell. I know it's pre-med, it's really hard to get out of the habit of making sure that you say, oh, by the way, I'm really compassionate, or oh, by the way, I really love science, I'm really fascinated by the human body, I really love helping people and working with people. But you really want to avoid a lot of these glittering generalities, phrases that a lot of people can just name drop just to feel reassured that you check off some of the boxes that people often think doctors need to have. Don't worry, because your experiences and your stories will speak for themselves. So definitely make sure to pick stories illustrative of your personality and some of the traits that are really important to you and that you want to highlight. AdComs have been through so many essays over the years, and just saying that you're compassionate, hardworking, driven, intelligent, fascinated by science doesn't really show who you are as a person if it's not substantiated by activities. So make sure to capitalize on the experiences and stories and that you're showing versus telling. Something to be mindful of, if there is some personal information or some kind of personal event that you've had that you wouldn't be comfortable talking about with an interviewer, you may want to refrain from putting this in your personal statement. However, if this is something that's been incredibly formative in your own experience, just be mindful that in an interview, interviewers may ask you about it. So if you're uncomfortable about talking about it, it's best to pick another experience or story. Another thing you want to be mindful of is respecting others' confidentiality and personal information. One thing I've seen a lot of people doing is to replace the real name with a fake name and to put quotes around this fake name the first time that you mention it so that it signifies to the reader that this is not the person's real name. HIPAA and respecting patients' privacy is really important in the medical field, so you want to make sure that you're setting a good example by respecting confidentiality in your personal statement and being respectful of those HIPAA rules. When you're including story examples in your personal statements, if you do have shadowing experiences or clinical experiences, make sure that you're not making patients the center of the stories and focusing on the patient stories instead of your own. Because remember, the personal statement is your chance to illustrate your story. So you want to make sure that you're including this as an example for why you chose to do medicine, but not making that patient story the center of your essay. One thing you want to avoid in your personal statement is negativity. Of course, with different patient stories and even in your own stories, you may come across some events that are, of course, not in the most positive light, but ultimately you want to avoid using too many things that have a negative connotation, as inherently human beings don't really like reading about negative things, so you don't want to include anything that's going to have a negative overtone for your essay. Remember that medicine is ultimately a very collaborative field, so you don't want to be using your essay to throw shade on healthcare professionals or highlight some kind of misconduct or unethical thing that you've noticed in medicine. You can definitely talk about things that you would like to see changed in healthcare. Definitely avoid making negative comments about healthcare professionals or anything that you've seen in your journey. This is more of a note as a writer, but in the intro, you don't want to overdo the descriptions. You definitely want want to have enough descriptions so that you're establishing the scene and providing enough scene building, but you don't want to have so many descriptions that it becomes overbearing or unrealistic, or that it starts to sound like a Wattpad story. Another thing that's really important to remember is to accept the fact and acknowledge that your main activities, unless you've cured cancer, are not going to be inherently unique or something that the AdComs have never seen before. Countless stories for pre-meds about volunteering abroad, a certain illness, a family member's illness, shadowing. So these definitely aren't unique or something that AdComs have never seen before. But what is unique to you is your own combination of experiences and how these combinations and your upbringing, your experiences, your life's journey, how these have all contributed to why you want to pursue medicine. There are so many good essays out there, so it's really hard to not get discouraged when you read someone's essay and it's completely out of the water, amazing, extraordinary experiences, but definitely be mindful that just like people, personal statements are all going to be different and unique to the individual. Make sure that you're not trying to capitalize off of some certain spike or edge and trying to find something different. Really using this essay as an opportunity to show off yourself, your personality, why you want to pursue medicine, and really demonstrate who you are as a person. Everyone has a different story, so don't try to force a certain narrative or base your essay off of someone else's that you really want to be. You are your own person, so you definitely need to own it with confidence and really let that shine through in the essay. Last tip, but also equally important, is to don't forget to include a reflection in your essay. You don't want to just simply list off experiences, but you also want to explain how these experiences have contributed to your journey and your decision as to why you want to pursue medicine. It's so important, not just in the personal statement, but in general, to take time to reflect as to your true reasons and motivations for pursuing medicine. That's a wrap for this video today. If you guys found the content helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It definitely helps this little channel out, and I wish you the best of luck in your medical school application process and beyond. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!